So what are you hearing from people in your world as they're processing what's going on in Israel?
My husband watches a lot of the news on it. He keeps up with it much more than I do because the news doesn't always give the accurate
I agree with you.
picture, but it's upsetting. It's horrific.
Dixie, it's so wonderful to see you on.
I was here earlier.
I know I was told you were here. I came on very late, but I'm happy that you have the strength to be on a class.
Well, I'm doing okay. I'm struggling, but we're getting there.
Thank God.
Yep.
You're
It's
strong. You have God's strength, and you're strong with God's strength.
you got it, because it's the only one. Yes. Yep. We're gonna make it.
That's right. Got to be strong with a lot of strength from God. All right. Well, I wanted to share and put in the context perspective on how we view what we can do in terms of what's going on. That, of course, is very, very painfully present in our heart every single minute, all day long, no matter what else is going on. And obviously there are other things going on, but that is always still absolutely, absolutely present in our heart. And there's a lot of things that our minds know, and there's a lot of things that our hearts feel. And of course, as humans, we are the synergy of what the mind knows and what the heart feels. So I'll give you some just overview ideas from a historical perspective, and then obviously very open to your input, what you're hearing, feeling, doing. So we know that we view Israel as the safest place in the world. It says biblically that it's a land where the eyes of the God are on constantly, from the beginning of the year until the end of the year. So Israel is the safest place in the world. It's a place where God is most directly watching constantly, almost as if from his watchful attention to Israel, from there spreads the watch to the rest of the world. I remember by the Gulf War, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe was repeating again and again how Israel is the safest place in the world. And do not leave Israel. That's the safest place in the world. And there was a chartered flight, primarily of students from Yeshiva University, a religious college in New York, and very cheap flights. It cost like $50 to go to Israel to express solidarity. January 1st, 1990. My husband got a ticket on that flight. And when they landed, of course, everybody else was running away from Israel. No planes were going to Israel. So when they landed, the reporters were there asking them, like, why'd you come? Why'd you come? And people are saying in English or maybe in broken Hebrew, to express solidarity with our brethren in this time of distress and this time of fear and this time of pain. Here to my husband, who has a bit of a sense of humor and a perfect Hebrew. So he said in his beautiful, flawless Hebrew that, he lives in America and he was a little scared, a lot of scary things going on in the world. So having some fear, he decided to go to Israel because he knows Israel is the safest place in the world. They love that. And my husband, as he was there for a week, and as he would travel on the empty buses, him and a bus driver, nobody was traveling, nobody was going anywhere. He heard on the radio his interview many times because it was such an empowering message for the people. So the challenge is, what creates our reality? Does Torah, does the word of God create our reality? If the word of God creates our reality, it's very simple. Israel's the safest place in the world. God is watching Israel. And my son and daughter-in-law and children are flying back to Israel tomorrow, exactly when they were supposed to fly back to Israel, on a different ticket, not American, hello, but going back to Israel. That's our reality. But then there's terrorism. Of course, as the name implies, the goal of terrorism is to evoke terror. That's what it wants. So we have this sort of choice to let terrorism win, to feel the terror, or for us to know we have the power. And, piggybacking off what Becca was saying earlier, not watching the videos and looking at the pictures that terrorists are putting out, which are designed to terrorize, which are designed to evoke fear, which are designed to make us feel hopeless and helpless. In Israel, they kept again and again and again encouraging everyone, especially parents of children, delete Instagram, delete TikTok. Don't have these mediums available for terrorists to terrorize you, for terrorists to harm you. That's their point. That's their goal. Don't give in to them. Thank God I didn't watch any videos. I didn't look at any pictures because I just knew it would just not be good for my soul, not be good for my energy, not be good for what I'm trying to accomplish in this world. What we do know is that Israel's gone through many things. And each time he had the very clear message of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. We have spiritual arsenal. When we use our spiritual arsenal, then the IDF, whatever it is, can use the physical means and be God's tools to create salvation. But none of it makes sense. It's only coming from the spiritual arsenal that we all can use. By the 6-Day War, that was when the Rebbe really, really pushed the idea of going out on the streets and getting Jewish men, 13 years and older, to put on tefillin, phylacteries. And every other war afterwards, the Rebbe always said the same thing. Tell this man outside Israel, that by him donning the phylacteries, by him putting on the tefillin, he's protecting a soldier in Israel. And the Rebbe quoted the verse that the rabbis explain, which is a reference to tefillin, that when the nations see on you the tefillin, they'll be terrified of you. They'll run away from you. And that's what we saw happen in the 6-Day War. It made no sense. There were 5 armies ready to destroy Israel, to chop it into little bits and pieces. And in 6 days, we won. Didn't make any sense. And literally, the armies, these very large troops would come with their ammunition, and they would run. And nobody was chasing them. And it was literally, and you could see the footage. It's that obvious that it was literally tefillin. It made no sense. Why are you running? Who are you scared of? They were terrified. What were they terrified of? The spiritual power, the tefillin. There's a story of a cadet, of someone learning West Point. And they were going through various wars and military strategies, famous wars over the years, and explaining them. And they never touched any of the wars in Israel. And this Jewish trainee, he was feeling like, whoa, look at this. It's not right. Why are you not acknowledging Israel's amazing wars? Why don't we learning that strategy? And he asked the professor, and the professor said, see me after class. He's like, okay, now I'm really in trouble. This is West Point. You're not supposed to argue with authority. And after class, the professor said to me, we don't teach the wars of Israel, because the wars of Israel are miracles. In West Point, we don't teach miracles. But it's that obvious. It's that obvious war after war after war that it didn't make sense. That it came from a power higher than military strategy. Remember with the Gulf War in 1990, as I mentioned before, the end of the year, the New York Times or the Times Magazine called it 1990 the year of miracles. The Gulf War was miraculous. And actually, we didn't even appreciate at the time how many miracles were in the Gulf War. It wasn't something from nature. 1973, so 1967 was the 6-Day War. 1973 was the Yom Kippur War, which of course was very reminiscent because that broke out deliberately on holiest day of our calendar. And this broke out on the most joyous day of our calendar. And so for many Jews celebrating Simchat Torah and hearing the news, it was definitely the sense of like 50 years ago, the Yom Kippur War. And now, then as we were praying, now as we're dancing, so to speak, this is what's happening. The entire summer before that war, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was pushing gathering of children to say verses of Torah, of prayer, to give charity. Lubavitcher was warning about the war. He ignored him. As the war broke out, the Rebbe continued speaking about the power of children, verses of Torah, charity, prayer. The Yom Kippur War did not seem as miraculous as the 6-Day War. It seemed like a much harder thing we had to go through. But the Rebbe actually said that there were even more miracles in the Yom Kippur War than in the 6-Day War. The Rebbe said that the enemies that attacked us from the north and the south, and then for some reason that made no sense, they sort of paused to regroup. And that pause, when they regrouped their forces, is what gave the Israeli army the ability to defend itself and ultimately counterattack. And militarily, it made no sense that they paused when they had this advantage. But again, God runs the world. So in the Yom Kippur War, we didn't realize the miracles, but the Rebbe said there was greater miracles. The Gulf War, after the Gulf War, where we of course saw tremendous miracles, but the Lubavitch Rebbe then wrote a letter that there's even greater miracles that we don't even know that happened by the Gulf War. Many years later, quite recently, came out very classified information that Saddam Hussein had planes loaded with chemical and biological warheads on them, on the missiles. And they had experimented with these heads, and they created poisons and other things that were lasted in the air for 50 years, which would make Israel uninhabitable for 50 years. And they were told, if anything happens, if Iraq loses the war, so anything happens to Saddam Hussein, fly those planes to Israel. At least that he's going to get. At least he's going to get the complete destruction of Israel, complete destruction of every human there, complete destruction of the land. The planes are already loaded. I don't have to give you the signal. If anything happens to me, if I get captured, caught, killed, fly them to Israel. If we lose the war, fly them to Israel. And inexplicably, shortly before the war was over, he said, unload the planes, change of strategy. Why? There's no why. It doesn't make sense. There was no reason. There was no justification. He didn't become a nice guy in the end. It's because God runs the world. There's a verse that says the heart of kings and officers is in the hand of God. Like now. Now we happen to have the support of the United States. We should happen to have the support of various news stations that are usually not at all supportive of Israel. It could stop at any moment, any second. It could turn around. But the fact that we have it now is miraculous. The heart of rulers is in the hand of God. And we don't rely on that support. We don't wait for that support. We're not intimidated if we don't have that support. But when we do have that support, we know it's just because that's what God decided now. That's what's necessary at this point. But the main point is it's in the hand of God. Everything is in the hand of God. In 1976, Lubavitch Rebbe introduced the idea of children saying 12 Torah passages right before the Entebbe hostages were taken. And during that time, the Rebbe again and again said that children have to say these passages, get children all over the world, rally thousands and tens of thousands of children, have them say these passages, and check mezuzahs. The mezuzahs of all the hostages. Some of them obviously had no mezuzahs. Anyone that had a mezuzah, the mezuzah was not kosher. And the Rebbe said also that if a Jew puts on a mezuzah anywhere in the world, this will help the security of all Jews anywhere in the world. And Entebbe made no sense. We sort of knew it then. It was highlighted more later with America when Iran took the U.S. embassy hostage. And America, with lots of time to figure it out, lots of time to practice, lots of money, lots of armament, tried to do something similar and failed miserably. And the IDF just did it without much time to think about it, without much time to plan it, without the logistics that seemingly you need. And even then it would be impossible. Because again, and the reason why I'm focusing on these things is for everyone to understand this point. The 6-Day War made no sense. That's why West Point doesn't teach it. And Entebbe was impossible. Even if you had lots of time to practice it, Entebbe was impossible. of the Jewish children were saying the 12 Torah passages. People were checking and adding mezuzahs, and somehow it happened. In 1981, in the spring of 1981, Lubavitcher Rebbe was warning very strongly about a madman that could press a button to destroy the world, and how he wants to press this button, how he's thinking of pressing this button, how there's literally, the Rebbe used the word a madman. And the Rebbe started this campaign of having a letter, starting with children, having letters in Torah scrolls, writing Torah scrolls with letters purchased by children, 1 letter per child. This was in 1981, and the Rebbe was pushing very much for this, pushing until like Shavuos. The Rebbe spoke about this very strongly on Lag BaOmer, which is a few weeks before Shavuos, and the Rebbe said, like, till Shavuos, to have all these Torah scrolls all over the world, get children to get letters in Torah scrolls. And that year, on the eve of Shavuos, in 1981, on June 7th, Israelis did Mission Impossible. They destroyed this nuclear reactor in Iraq, which again, was impossible. Not expecting anyone to come home alive. It's not like Iraq is going to let you into the airspace. It's not like Iraq is going to get you anywhere near the reactor. How did they do it? Okay, they were flying low. How did they do it? How were they not seen? They're flying low. How were they not seen? How did they get into the space of the nuclear reactor? How did they bomb it? How did they get back alive? Doesn't make any sense. 6-day war made no sense. Entebbe made no sense. This made no sense. This idea of the letters in the Torah scroll, which again, the Rebbe started then in 1981, with his very strong goal of destroying this reactor, has continued ever since. One of my children, one of my sons, is very into it. He goes out every night to the airport, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and if there's a flight Saturday night, he goes Saturday night to sign up people. Now, the people flying to Israel are soldiers. They're gathering reservists from the entire world. We have 300,000 reservists now on active duty. So every night planes go out from New York full of soldiers that are on reserve, which means now instead of focusing on children, they're focusing on the soldiers and on encouraging the soldiers to purchase a letter, 1 letter per person, $1 a letter for their protection. So usually you don't hear the other side. You only know your side. But it was interesting this past week, a relative of a relative, my cousin's cousin, so to speak, she's a reservist. She's actually a general in the Israeli army. She's a 30-year-old woman, single woman. And I actually don't know if she's on reserve duty or she just happened to be in America at the time. But she was called up for duty. And she's from America. So her whole family is escorting her to the airport. And my son sees them, and again, he realizes a soldier. He gets her to buy the letter, of course. And then he actually realizes, he heard them talking, he realized, oh, these are our cousin's cousins. So he introduced himself. So later they called my cousin, who then called me the next day, to say that when this woman purchased the letter, she said to her family, this is the best way to go to war. Here I am getting on this plane. I know what I'm going to face when I get off this plane. And just purchasing this letter gives me such a sense of security, such a sense of safety, such a sense that we're going to be okay. Which, as her mother conveyed to my cousin, who conveyed to me, it's a very special feeling. All over Israel, what they're doing now for the soldiers is making tzitzit, making the fringes that a Jewish male wears, tzitzis, which many of these soldiers don't own, but now they all want because they understand it's protection. And they know that's the real protection. That's what's going to protect them. So you have children, you have retirees, you have people all over Israel making these tzitzit, for the soldiers and distributing them to the soldiers. And you see videos of the soldiers' joy when they're getting these tzitzis, because they have such a sense of, okay, this is a God protection. This is what we need. This is a God protection. So they get it. We get it. We all get it. We need weaponry. The real weapons at work are spiritual. The spiritual weapons destroy the enemy. In the Torah portion, in the Torah, it says, if you go on my statutes, then, and lists many blessings, including, I will bring peace to the land. You will go, you will not be scared. So the verse starts off, if you go on my statutes. And the sages say, if is a language of pleading, like, please go on my statutes. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, God is saying, please, because I want to respond. I want to protect you. I want to bring peace to the land. I want that you should walk strongly and safely and proudly and not have any fears. Please go in my statutes so I can create all this for you. Which again goes to the idea of everything goes back to spiritual. Some very strong weapons we have: joy and confidence. God is in control. I was, for the holiday of Sukkot, for most of the holiday, I was actually not in Chicago. I was in New York, in the world headquarters of Chabad Lubavitch in Crown Heights, Brooklyn in 770, which is full of Israelis. It's more likely if you meet someone, you start speaking Hebrew first and only English second, because the more likely assumption is they're from Israel. So I was surrounded on last Saturday and Sunday with people from Israel. By the night, Saturday night, Simchat Torah night, I was standing the whole time next to a girl from Sderot, from one of the 3 cities right by the border with Gaza. She said she was just focusing on joy. On Sunday of Simchat Torah, near me was a woman who has 4 sons in the army. The woman I was standing next to the whole day said to me at the end to please pray for her son who was just called up. And all these women and girls, I mean, I assume by the men's side also, but I was on the women's side, all these women and girls knew one thing: we need to add in joy. We added in dancing. We added in singing. That's our power. So the whole Saturday and the whole Sunday, I was dancing more than I usually do. I was singing more. I was encouraging. I was with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and more and more and more. So many women. It's the same message. Joy. Our joys can create miracles. Now there's many different miracles that did happen that are coming out. And we're finding now, of course, what you find out right away is all the horrors. And now, over the week, heard things that made no sense. This grandfather in Tel Aviv that drove down and saved his son and grandchildren in a kibbutz that was taken over by terrorists. Whatever. Thank God. A number of such things that make no sense in the world. And as I hear them, I think back to our dancing and joy and song and confidence and pushing it. More joy, more joy, more joy, more joy, more confidence. Our joy is changing reality. And I wonder, maybe we were part of those miracles. Maybe our joy and confidence and song helped create some of the amazing miracles that have come out. Obviously, tremendous pain has come out. Tremendous pain. But there have been also God's miracles. And I'm wondering if the miracles were created, maybe, by our dancing, by our joy. It was very powerful for me on Sunday, reading the Torah portion of Sunday, which was the entire final book of the Torah, and the beginning of Genesis one more time. And in the end of the Torah, reading the verses all talking about the strength of Israel. And then when we start the Torah over with Genesis, what is the focus there? We're asked, why are we talking about creation? Creation. Torah's instruction. Torah's the commandments. Why did we talk about God creating heaven and earth? Wasn't there anything, you know? That's the point of Torah. Torah tells us what we're supposed to do for God, not history. And it's explained there because there'll come a time when people will say, you're robbers. You stole this land. And we'll point to the first verses of the Bible. And we'll say, no. Look at the Bible. God created this land. God created this world. God chose to give the land of Israel to the people of Israel. It's ours. Look in the Bible. That was the Torah portion of Simchat Torah, the Torah portion of Sunday. It was very, very, very powerful reading that Torah, thinking of this concept amid everything going on. And this was really the theme in 1991 on this Torah portion of Bereshis. The Lubavitcher Rebbe said so strongly this idea of this theme. It's our land, and we're God's people, and the world will recognize that. So the main point that we need to know is we're all fighters. Everyone on this class is a fighter. Anyone who's going to be listening and is now listening to this class is a fighter. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be attending. There's lots of different brigades in the army. There's lots of different divisions. There's a spiritual army, and from that strength, the physical army. It says about King David that King David would stay at home, and his general, Yoav, would go out and fight the wars. And Yoav had tremendous victories. And the sages say all the victories we credit to David. Well, that's not fair. David's at home. Yoav is on the field. Because David's prayers and David's Torah study, that created Yoav's victories. So we're the important part of the army. We're the spiritual brigades. And from that spiritual brigade, we have the physical army will do things that make no sense. Like the 6-Day War made no sense. Like Entebbe raid made no sense. Like the destroying the nuclear reactor made no sense. We will empower them to make miracles. I keep telling God, I want it to be so obvious. I want it to be so obvious it's you. It's not nature. It's not the IDF. It's God. So what could you do? I'm sure you're all doing things. Add in prayer. So many prayers we ask to destroy the enemy. Add in Psalms. Throughout the conflicts, there was always the emphasis on Psalms. Classically, I'll give you some that you could say. You could, of course, add any 20, 22, 69, 122, 123, 150, 81 through 90, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90. And any others you would like to say. In a time of conflict, you can say Psalms by day and by night. Normally, we're careful not to say Psalms at night. You could say Psalms at night in such a situation. Also, charity, you can give it any time. Add in prayer. Add in Psalms. Add in charity. It's not as important the amount as to just keep giving, the act of charity. It says charity saves from death. The act of charity protects. One of my sons, his friend, who was in the army, they were sent down south into the area that the terrorists had attacked. And they basically were split them up into like two sections. The groups that were looking for terrorists and the groups that were looking for bodies. So this friend of my son's, he was in one of the groups. Obviously, there are many, 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 many that were looking for bodies. You know, they divided them in different areas of this whole strip that was massacred. So he was with 4 other people. So it was a group of 5 soldiers looking for bodies. And terrorists found them. And terrorists started shooting at them. And he thought he was going to die. There were many more terrorists than the 5 of them, and they were shooting, they were shooting to kill. And he thought he was going to die. He thought this was the end. And then God made a miracle, and another group of Israeli soldiers looking for terrorists, not for bodies, stumbled on them and killed out the terrorists. He escaped completely. 3 of the other soldiers were wounded quite strongly, but they all survived. Who knows who created that miracle? Maybe one person in the world who was saying psalms, who was adding in prayer, who was giving charity. I have a cousin who's a reservist in Israel. He lives in Israel. He's an American that lives in Israel, but he's also a nurse who works in a hospital, and they didn't call him up because they're not calling up right now the medical professionals that work in the hospitals, because there's so many wounded from the massacres and from all the soldiers. Unfortunately, more from the soldiers, because the massacres didn't really leave wounded. But they need the people in the hospitals to take care of all the soldiers that are coming in so wounded. So there's a tremendous need for prayers, for charity, for psalms, for unity. It's been very special feeling among Jews. The absolute sense of brotherhood, the absolute sense of being one. And it's also been very special how Noahides, and even people that have relationships with Noahides, or until now didn't know they were Noahides, but how other people in the world are really feeling the pain and being supportive. It's very, very, very special. Again, we know the whole world could turn against us, and maybe will. And we pray the government will ignore it. But at this moment, every person who gives support and expresses solidarity and expresses a sense of pain and the horror and the tragedy is another human being that is united with the Jewish people. And that's very powerful. It was beautiful how Natalie posted how her brother-in-law, I don't remember if she posted it to me, probably she put it on the group, but her brother-in-law, who's not a Noahide, but wrote, and it was just very beautiful. And Rebecca said about her, it's your older brother.
Mhm.
And it was also, it's just there's an awakening, and we appreciate that awakening, and it's precious. It's very, very, very precious. It's very, not only precious, there's a power to it. There's a power of people caring, of people being united, of people saying, we feel your pain and we're with you in your pain. And I'm saying, you see in Israel, not kosher restaurant, making kosher their kitchen to be able to provide food for refugees that only eat kosher, food to provide food for the soldiers. Everyone sending food to the soldiers. It's like a joke how much food everyone is constantly sending to these soldiers. I said, making the seat for the soldiers. Everything happening. God should already be so happy with the unity and love people are showing for each other. That should be enough. Should be enough for protection. It was Nikki Haley who said, the Jews are blessed and Israel is blessed, and you can't destroy something blessed. I think many other people have said similar sentiments. And every time something like that's echoed, it's out in the world, it's a positive energy. It's a good energy. It's a godly energy. So we need to be very positive. We need to think good. Jews and non-Jews have the same power that our thoughts can create reality. So good exists and other stuff exists, but we can choose what to focus on. And what we focus on, that will be manifest. That is gaining strength by our thoughts. So we want to focus that Israel is the safest place in the world, as my children are flying back to Israel tomorrow. Israel is the safest place in the world. We have the spiritual arsenal to destroy the enemy. We have the spiritual arsenal to save every captive. And we're human, so we can cry, and we can feel enormous pain, and we can feel enormous loss, and we can feel the horror. And then we have to have confidence. Like I said, I was with hundreds, thousands and thousands of people over the holiday, all from Israel, dancing, might be crying also, but dancing. We don't want to give terrorists power. We don't want to give in to terror. We want to be confident. We want to be joyous. And we want to do more to create miracles. We can all give God the same message. Show the world every Jew is your only child. Show the world your power. Don't let your name be disgraced. Don't let anyone think it's the IDF. No, let the whole entire world see it is you. Should be that obvious. Does anyone want to share any of their thoughts or feelings or things they've done this week?
I would like to. I have 2 sons from another mother in Israel. They adopted us when they came and stayed with us. So they we're really close. And Ken, the youngest, got sent to the front line on Hezbollah. And
That's the north, if he was sent to Hezbollah.
yes, he's in the north. And we hadn't heard from him for a few days. And I was so thankful because I got a text from Oren, the other son, who said that they had heard from him right after Shabbat. So I was relieved, but needless to say, it's very close to home for me and for all Israel. I pray constantly. We all do, because how we have to. We're all one. We're all united.
So you're adding in prayer.
And of course, I've given quite a bit of money.
You're adding in charity.
And to a lot of things there that I've given as much as I can, but do everything I can.
Very active charity is powerful, meaning if you have a charity box and you put every day a quarter in it, a dime in it, a nickel in it, that's an act of charity. And if 3 times a day you put a nickel in it, that's 3 acts of charity. So there's the quantity. Obviously, on a practical basis, yes, I've also given and encouraged people to give, and there's lots of things that have to be purchased. But there's also the very spiritual act of charity. And that's also very, very, very powerful. It says charity saves from death.
Yep. That's good to know, that 3 days a day. I need to be doing it 3 times a day.
Yeah, I give charity many times a day. Charity keep giving charity. Keep giving charity. But it was amazing because on Friday, Hamas said that's the day where all adherents of Hamas all over the world should attack Jews all over the world, kill Jews all over the world. And maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear anything that happened.
Warren told me when Friday, when I talked to him before Shabbat, Thursday I talked to him because we read scripture every night. And he said that tomorrow he was a little concerned about going to work because that they had said that all over the world was going to be this uprising. And he said, I'm going to work, but he said it could be concerning. He said, I'm taking my Shabbat clothes. I might have to stay in Jerusalem. I might not make it home. And so anyway, he texted me I talked to him after he got home on Friday, and he said the streets were clear. He said when he left on Friday morning for work, he said there was not an Arab on the streets. And he said when he came home from work, there was 2 Arabs handcuffed alongside the road. He said that's the only people on the streets on Friday, which was a miracle in itself.
Yeah, and I was thinking afterwards, that we're saying, God, where are the miracles? God, where are the miracles? The fact that they put out this very loud, powerful cry. Yeah. And I heard the FBI said, this is legit. This is legit. Take it seriously. Take it seriously. They mean it. Don't leave your houses. They mean it. They want to massacre you. They've made it part of their religion. This is the day they said they're going to massacre Jews worldwide. And whatever they were attempts to do, it didn't happen as far as I know anywhere in the world that I think I would have heard. And I didn't hear anywhere, anything happening, besides lots and lots and lots of security. And also my son was traveling on Friday to New York, and I was like, oh, this is the day they're targeting. He's a 15-year-old boy traveling himself, and when he gets to New York, and how's he going to get to Brooklyn? And I'm like, no, I'm not giving into terrorism. I'm not going to not have him travel. That would be giving into fear. I'm not giving into that fear. No, we're not going to stay in our homes on Friday. We have things to do. There's a lot to take care of Friday, and that's it. We're not going to be fearful. And, God protects.
I think a lot of it was definitely God, don't get me wrong, but the Jerusalem Post had publicized it heavily in Israel, that to be very careful, and that they had declared this. And I think that there was so much put out about it being declared that they knew that they were ready for them.
Maybe the night before, Thursday night, Israel time, my son was speaking to a friend of his who's in charge of the security on a settlement in the areas of the settlements, which are anyway areas that the Arabs anyway would attack. They were like, are we ready if these Arabs just suddenly start swarming? And they're like, we're just going to trust God, and we're going to be ready. And nothing happened.
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. So we have to trust, and we do trust, and we have to add. And anything you add, I said prayer, psalms, charity, you can add any other thing God wants from you. And you could tell God, this is for the protection of Israel. This is for the protection of the captives. They should all be returned. This is for the protection of the soldiers. This is for peace, real peace, not fake peace. This is for real peace, real security. And God willing, it should happen. And God willing, we should all know we're in the brigades. We're part of the troops creating the victory. Okay. Thank you so much for joining, and
Thank
hopefully
you.
you can spread this message.
Thank you so much.
Tanya, do you want to add something? You're saying something?
Oh, no, I just want to say thank you for the class today.
So we should hopefully spread this class and spread this message.
Yes.
Many people can hear it and sign up for their part in the army. Thank you so
Amen.
much for caring.
Thank you.
Shavut Tov.